A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
It's lights out and away we go. It's a great start from Sebastian Vettel. Wink up the inside. McLaughlin gets into space. They run, but the Red Bull Racing man has got through. The champion's done the job. They're all gone. They're all gone. Tander's off. McLaughlin's off. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 7-time champ. Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup championship.
Good evening and welcome all of you watching to Silverstone for round 2 of AMS Australia's Formula 3 series, brought to you in conjunction with Short Shift Podcast. My name's Nether, and in the commentary box today I am welcomed by Brock Harvey giving us some special commentary, and Josh Bagsy also in commentary. So gentlemen, good evening.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here in Northamptonshire for this shortened Silverstone circuit, which will be quite excellent to watch because the drivers might know the original circuit, but this shortened version not so much.
It is a very short circuit. It is the circuit that existed back in the days of 1997 to 2002. Was the old International Motorcycle Circuit. It's a 12-turn circuit, so as you said, a lot of drivers probably not entirely familiar with this layout. It'll be interesting to see what happens here tonight. 2 races, 15-lap qualifications and 2 15-lap sprint races, same as our last round in Santa Cruz. Before we get too far into proceedings, probably just a quick recap of the points standings. So I'll bring them up for you now. And by virtue of the double-double last round at Santa Cruz, Heath Dixon is the points leader with 40 points, the maximum possible. So he heads Johnny in second on 34, followed by Corey Ott, Baker, Matthew Schwass, Greg Nangle, Grant English, Jamie Snow, Luke and Matt Williams are the major point scorers. The rest of the guys on the board there just getting on the board in the second race. Not too many points, but hopefully they will be able to redeem themselves here in Silverstone.
It's interesting to see that both of you and Brock Harvey are on the leaderboard there. Participated in the first race, but have decided to come up into the commentary booth to have a spin up here instead.
Yeah, so Brock's going to be joining us throughout most of the broadcasts nowadays, electing not to take the F3. I mean, the only reason I was in the F3 broadcast or in the list of F3 drivers was we sat up in there prior to us having access to the live telemetry, which coincidentally, if any of you who are watching would like to have a look at the live telemetry, you need to go to amsoz.liveraces.com/live, and you'll see exactly what we see, all the drivers, all the timings, who's setting what lap, who's on quick laps, and it is very, very insightful, and you'll be also able to see who's posted the best times overall since the survey's gone live across the race weekend. Well, gentlemen, that's qualifying about to begin. Practice is over and done with. The man at the top of the standings is Lewis Wedding. Surprise, surprise. He's been on fire as of late. Do you think he can upset the points leader? He made a little bit of a meal of things in Santa Cruz, but do you think he's got a realistic chance here of getting on the front row and redeeming himself?
Oh, absolutely. Lewis has been pretty quick in just about everything he's jumped in lately. So, yeah, I think he's probably the favourite going in tonight. He's done quite a few laps around this track from his R-Factor racing days. And, yeah, you probably know the place inside out, as far as I know. So Heath could be in with a bit of a shock.
He could very well be for a bit of a shock. As we see all the cars starting to file out of the pits for first qualification runs for Q1 for race number 1. We've got Grant English here on screen just going through the second part of Maggots and on his way now through sector 2 of this layout. Excuse me.
It'll be Sorry,
Bagsy, you go. I was going to say that I quickly discovered I'm not an open wheeler driver, so I think I'm going to be much better suited with you guys in the commentary box tonight, rather than out on track trying to take on these guys who are absolute jets when you put a wing on the car. So yeah.
We have seen from the Santa Cruz race 2 weeks ago that some of these guys really know how to handle a Formula 3 car, and some guys took a little bit longer to get to grips with it. And some interesting array of lines here as we just watched Grant try and take a very, very late sort of apex onto the main straight. Well, he's the first man to come along and try and set a time, so we'll just go on board and we'll give you a bird's eye view from the driver's position of this layout. So this is Copse, a very fast, flat out right-hander. Turn number 1. Getting a little bit
wide out there,
very squirrely on the apex. And this is now the run down into Maggots. So Maggots becomes a double right-hander here. And this is where it gets a little bit different for people who are not familiar with the layout. The island chicane. And now this sweeping straight that runs all the way across the circuit. This part not in existence today. For a hard braking opportunity. And a hard braking opportunity here for what is the Abbey hairpin, but that's Grant English having clouted somebody there.
It was Voda. He's run into Voda, who was sitting exactly on the racing line, unfortunately, and has caused that quite significant incident there, so that will most likely be looked at.
And later. Wings galore going flying. Well, here we go. Here's Matt Schwass, so let's rejoin him, and hopefully we have a bit more luck. So we've got a bit more of a T-cam view here. Nice line through the island chicane. Now this is where we just saw the incident occur. Matt Williams on his way down to Abbey, which in this layout is a right-hand hairpin. We'll run down the farm straight.
Spectacular start there for Voda, unfortunately.
No, definitely not. Bridge corner, flat-out right-hander. Now his Priory, left-hander, turn number 9. Brooklands turn 10. This is where the GP circuit today rejoins from the right. And then we've got Luffield, this nice long sort of steady state corner. And back onto the main straight, and then this little fast flat out right hand kink here is Woodcote, the 12th and final corner on the circuit.
Wedding has just fired in a 1:15.4 to go straight to the top.
By 1.5 seconds.
1.5 seconds in the early going.
That time is half a second faster than his time in practice. So he's definitely he's taken what he's learned in practice, and he's definitely putting it to practice now with quite a good result. Also, Heath Dixon, currently in second, has set a time that was about half a second faster than his practice time too. So I reckon he's probably got a bit still in the bag there too. But we'll see if it's 1.3 seconds or not, because that is quite the margin, with Wedding seeing the fastest time we've seen so far. Yeah. And he's on another fast lap too.
He is. We just saw in the first split that he was about 2 tenths up on his best time. He's lost a little bit of time there, but he's still 1.5 tenths up. And the points leader, Heath Dixon's going to have some work to do if this man gets on his game. He absolutely dominated the Supercars round a week and a half ago. Didn't have it all his own way in the Super Series on Thursday night. Brenton Hobson taking out both those races, but he lowers the bar again, and we're agonisingly close already to diving under the 15s here. So wasting no time, Lewis Wedding throwing down the gauntlet and saying, catch me if you can.
That is one hell of a lap, 1:15.0. That's going to be taking a fair bit of effort to get close to that, let alone beat it, I think. Greg Nangle's got out and gone quick. He's in second at the moment. Naggers is a pretty good driver, and as you know, he's very audacious. He will not give up the fight at all. So we're hoping to get on the front row as well.
Certainly not. And Lewis is still pushing. So he's on a 3-lap run here. So he's set his initial lap, then set another lap that bettered his first run, and he's not far away at the Sector 1 split, or he wasn't far away at the Sector 1 split from bettering his time again. Let's see what the Sector 2 time comes up. He's a 10th away, but he's not giving up. He saw that 15.0 come up, and he wants to go under it. And we said this on Thursday night about going under a certain time barrier, and Brenton Hobson smashed it. Back to you, Bagsy.
We've had a few further back down the field. Matt Williams hasn't been having the best time. He's had 2 spins so far on his out and hot laps, so he's struggling to set another time. He does have his time in 6th at the moment, but you'd think he'd have more speed if he can string a lap together. Also, Grant English doesn't set a lap time. He was the first person out, the person we were following when he had the incident with Voda. And yeah, I believe it was from our producer. He said that Voda stopped on the racing line, and English basically had nowhere to go. He would have expected Voda to get off the racing line or sort of accelerate a bit, which he unfortunately did not. And I believe the way the producer described it, I won't repeat on air, but
Yes.
we can probably agree it wasn't the smartest move from Voda. So hopefully that can be that might be looked at later. So.
Voda's already on 2 strikes, so he can't really afford to be doing those kind of things, especially in qualifying, where there's no excuse not to get out of the way and get out of the way off racing line. So, yeah, it's certainly something that will be looked at in regards to his driving record.
No, that's right. He's unfortunately received a 1-race ban already for an indiscretion in the Supercars series, and he's had a few run-ins with some of the other drivers in the, I believe, in the Porsche series and in the GT3 series as well. A few guys weren't happy. No formal protests were lodged, but he's unfortunately had a rough couple of weeks, Voda, and he really needs to have a clean race here and not off to a very good start. We're watching. Sorry, go on, bro.
He actually won't be competing at Phillip Island in the Supercars. He did receive a 1-race ban from Supercars competition. So, yeah, he's got a night off this Thursday.
So he misses this Thursday, and even though he's in the Super 2 series, he will, or the Pro-Am series as we like to call it on here, he will not be able to participate in that either. So he misses that round, as you rightly pointed out.
Brian Walsh just had a spin right in front of him as I'm watching Voda on screen at the moment. So
we've got also we're watching Nagel here, and he's got Ott right behind him. They're both on fast laps, but you got the feeling that Ott's been compromised by a fair bit here, and Ott is 2 positions down on Nagel, but you've got the feeling he can go. There's only 4 tenths between them, and just from the look of it, Ott does have the pace, but if he keeps staying so close to Nagel, he's not going to have the time to get he's gone quite wide there. He's not going to have the time to get a lap in.
No, well, in actual fact, Ott actually jumped up a position there. He leapfrogged Matchwas from 4th to 3rd and probably got a little bit of a tow from Nangle down the straight as well. So that's the only real redeeming factor, is that if he needs to get a bit of a tow, it's right there, as Nangle actually improves on his PB there, and Ott takes liberties with the chicane, so that won't render him or register him for a flying lap this time around. Corey Ott is currently in 3rd place in the drivers' standings, as well as in the provisional qualifying standings as well right now. So you'd want to be right up there, as you rightly pointed out. He's probably going to feel a bit aggrieved, but when you've got 2 cars that are on flying laps, the blue flag is not displayed. So the guys have to find their own way around. And Greg just coming up to the final couple of corners here. He's through Luffield, and the next one will be Woodcote on this run to the start-finish line.
Brian Walsh is in more trouble coming through turn 1. Looks like he's lost his rear wing, having a spin across the front of pit lane. Nearly took a car coming down pit lane.
So Greg improves his time to a 1:15.9, but he's still almost a second off the leader's pace at the moment.
He's broken the psychological barrier of being less than a second behind Lewis Wedding. But
that's a very psychological barrier, that one, isn't it?
That'll be cold comfort for him. He can say that he is the only one who isn't a long way behind Lewis Wedding, but that's probably not a monkier he wants, to be honest. And the best of the rest is probably the best way to describe it.
Well, here's the man we were talking about a few minutes ago, Brian Walsh, our producer in the pit lane, who is actually Stairs, and he's being Britain. I'm sure he's enjoying a nice warm beer. He lost, Grant English lost it on the pit exit and hit the barrier, and that's what caused him to lose his rear wing. So they pushed it back into the pits, fitted a new rear wing, and he's back on track now, and this is his first proper flying lap. Hopefully he can improve his time. He's currently set up in 13th at the minute, but his time is not truly representative of the pace. It's a 1:22.6, and you can see already some 8 tenths clear of his PB time, so he is set to jump up the order a little bit.
That's you can say that for him, but Grant English is currently 8 seconds up on his best lap time, but that's because his best lap time is a 1:26. He seems to have had an issue getting a clean lap in after that initial incident with Voda, so maybe it's caused him to. He's got inside his head a little bit. So hopefully he'll be able to. He's actually on a decent bit of pace here. So this should put him right up the field. I believe it will put him around about 9th, but I am not entirely sure. He'll be coming across the line very soon.
So currently with 8.7 seconds on his PB, it'll give him about an 18, which will slot him into 12th place. But it actually betters it. He actually goes a lot further up than he found a lot more time in that third sector, and a 9.3 seconds clear of his PB puts him up into 8th. So he was on pace to get up there.
Anytime you qualify ahead of Johnny, you're doing quite well. Johnny's pretty handy steerer as well, so he'd be happy with that time, I think.
I think he would. And speaking of the devil, we'll have a look at Johnny. He is currently second in the point standings with 34 points, 6 points behind Heath Dixon after the first round. And this lap for Johnny's not really going to be a true representative lap, but it's a run into a much faster lap. So here he goes through the first turn. Now, there's a fair bit of aero push if you're following the car behind through turn 1, so you wouldn't want to be too close and follow through there. You would, if you've got no hope of passing at turn number 1, then you'll just have to back off and get through there and then take your opportunity down at the Maggots corner.
Steering through that, all our drivers are able to chat to each other during the race, so it leads to a little bit of back and forth. And apparently, at the moment, Wedding is taking advantage of his lofty position in first there by a fair way to taunt some of the other people, namely Corey Ott, who's been talking big game about how he's going to send it. He's going to do a Daniel Ricciardo, lick it, stamp it, and send it. But Wedding just mentioning to him that he had 5 laps to do it on Thursday in the Porsche Super Series race and didn't manage it. So a bit of shade being thrown there by Wedding, and he's a long way ahead, so he probably doesn't need to, but just getting in the heads of some of the other drivers, perhaps. Psychological advantage.
And I think
anyone who watched F1 for the last 4 years will probably know about.
Yes, and just looking at the guys who are sat up in the pits at the moment, Lewis Wedding, as we were talking about him, has sat up in the pits and just sitting back and seeing what these guys can do. Heath Dixon's just finished a 10 lap. His 10th lap, and has sat up into 3rd place and now just coming out again. Voda and Aussie, the other 2 guys who are sitting in the pits at the moment. The field is quite a golfing class at the moment. We've got first through to 12th is separated by 2.7 seconds, and then the last few guys are well off the pace. So Voda 121.8, Aussie 122.1, and Brian Walsh 122.6. Really not on the pace at the moment, but could have had some compromised laps. Hopefully they'll be able to get themselves a bit further up the field. They've got a minute 30 left in the session to set themselves a decent lap.
Looks like Aussie and Voda in the pits, so they will not be setting any more lap times.
Well, they are. If they haven't left it already, then they will not get an opportunity to set another lap. So that's them probably done and dusted. So the last man on the track at the moment is Brian Walsh, and he's just come out of the Abbey hairpin, so he'll get another crack at having a decent lap. All the guys are currently on track. Matt Williams up in 4th, so you're right. He somehow has pulled a little bit of a lap out from somewhere. He had a very decent result, race 2 on the Super Series on Thursday night. Absolutely chuffed to be up at 3rd place after a late safety car. The biggest mover on the night too. He gained 11 positions in that second race, and he gained 6 or 7 in the first race, so he really was on a charge when he got himself going.
Seems Stairs has got a hold of Wedding while Wedding has his little... I know, Wedding's sitting in the pits at the moment, so Stairs has gone up to him, and apparently Wedding says these cars aren't really his thing, which is has been a common theme, which he's said the cars aren't his thing and then has won the race, so...
Very interesting to know what kind of car is his thing, because he said that about every car that we run, as Matt dropped a couple of tenths in the 3rd sector there.
I hope we don't find out what car is his thing, because he'll be lapping the field after 5 laps if we do.
Exactly. I think he's a massive Formula 1 fan, so he'd be hoping that we Formula 1 series sooner or later, but really Formula 3 is only 2 steps away. I would have thought this would be his thing pretty much.
That's true. Time has expired on the session, so now we're just looking to see the last few people come through and complete their laps. And I believe Baker is the last one to come through.
Yep.
It's the first one to come through and complete a lap.
So Baker stays 9th, so he doesn't improve. As we look through the field to see who else on track. Greg Nangle, he's going to the pits, so he's not going to be representing a lap. We've also got Brian Walsh, who's setting his best lap.
Matt Williams is going to be the next one to come through.
Yep, so Matt Williams is the next man on track as we cycle through to Matt Williams to see if he can improve.
he's 1,000th down on 1,000th of a second down
on his
on
PB.
his best lap. So we'll see if for him to improve, he needs to find an extra 500ths of a second. So it's very doable in this final sector, and that'll put him above Heath to get him third.
He's currently on the second row, sharing with the points leader, and stays fourth, so stays on the second row and shares that with the points leader for the start of the race. The only man who we are waiting on to set a time is Brian Walsh, and he's slow out on track, so that's the end of the session for him. Unfortunately, he'll be the 14th runner, and we've just lost somebody out of the server temporarily as well. We've got some more banter from our drivers down in the pits. The points leader is out of beer, and the Rambo is trying to fit in a pit stop of his own before he gets back in the car.
Fair enough. I believe they have a 5-minute warm-up now, so he should be fine. If he doesn't want to go out and do some warm-up laps, he should be able to, hoping that he's not a camel, should be able to make that no dramas.
Rambo was actually a late mover too, so he launched from 8th place up to 5th, just behind Matt Williams at the end of that session. So we just unfortunately missed out on watching him do that on your screens, but a very, very handy result. So he's recovering, Rambo, from a pretty nasty incident with Matt Williams as well from the Monza thing, so trying to rebuild that reputation. They have had words during the week and cleared the air over that incident a couple of weeks ago.
It's a pretty impressive time by Rambo, I have to say. He's still relatively new to our series, and as you just mentioned, has had some issues in the first couple of races that he's had, but no doubt he's a competent racer, and keeps his nose clean. He can hopefully get a solid result and get some nice points out here tonight.
He's in one of the same sort of situation as Jamie Snow is. Only had a wheel for a short period of time, converting from being a pad gamer to a wheel racer, and is slowly finding his feet. And of course, you're always going to make a few mistakes when you move from something that you've been familiar with to something completely unfamiliar and having to learn it. No doubt he'll get better over time, but it's good to see that the air between those two, Williams and Rambo, has been cleared, and they both understand that mistakes do happen, and people just need to pay a little bit more attention sometimes. But that's just the way things sort of tend to go nowadays, doesn't it, gentlemen? It's good just to it's good rivalry and good sportsmanship to shake hands and bury the hatchet.
Yeah, that's it, and that's what the league and the series is about, really. Like, you're going to make mistakes, and everyone does it. Everyone's made contact with somebody at some stage. As long as you can bury the hatchet, I think it's a good thing.
Just hearing that in the driver's briefing, Wedding has been as kind as to offer his setup for everyone else to try. One would probably wonder what kindness it really is, considering he's offering it after the practice and qualifying sessions where no one will be able to actually try it out before. They'll get another 4 minutes here to try it out before the race, and I don't think that's really enough time to get to grips with an entirely new setup for your car.
Well,
so
there's a few takers that may be on the case. So Baker and Keane and Voda have all vanished out onto track. Maybe they are taking him up on his very, very generous offer, but we'll soon find out.
I'd be balking at that if I was those guys. The Formula 3 cars, they're really set-up sensitive cars, so you can make one or two changes and it's a completely different bus than what you were driving before. So I guess they got nothing to lose with how far down the grid they are, but that's something I would probably be considering for the next race rather than this race.
Yeah, unless you're sort of an experienced hand, you don't want to sort of get used to something that you haven't gotten used to for an extended period of time, such as in the practice session. It's very, very difficult to sort of go out and gauge what someone else's setup will do to your car, and you really need the time to learn it and assess it for yourself.
Yeah, especially braking into turn 3 or 4. If you've got a setup that you're not used to and you're braking in a pack, it's pretty easy to make a mistake in there, and it could cause a pretty significant accident.
Well, speaking of braking in packs and causing incidents, we reflect on Santa Cruz round 1, where we had a couple of incidents throughout the race, but it all seemed to kick off at the end of the race, or towards the end of the race, a couple of laps from home. And what springs to mind is Heath Dixon managing to do his double-double and having everybody crash in front of him and shoot through and take an unexpected win, especially in the second race, from 5th place. And that's something I guess it's a theme that I want to take a look at a bit later tonight. Is the pole position driver always seems to have a bit of a tardy start in most recent weeks. the pole position driver has gotten away very, very poorly and has been swamped into turn 1. Now, it's a very, very short run into turn 1 this time. You do not want to be having a tardy start, especially since the racing line is on the outside of the track, and you could have somebody up your inside very quickly before that turn 1 comes up.
Yeah, for sure. In theory, you don't want to be pinched into that first corner. You'd really want a full car length going into turn 1, because otherwise you're probably going to be on the brakes and having a tardy exit as well. So you could lose 2 or 3 positions if you don't make turn 1 first from the inside line.
Absolutely. We've having a look through our results here just to see who we have lost from the first session, but we did have 15 runners. I'm just trying to figure out who it was that has gone. It looks like no match force is in there. I'm just trying to work out who it is, but we're struggling to find our missing runner. So we were up to 15. We've now lost one.
So we don't have any Jamie Snow here tonight, which is a little bit disappointing because he's been so quick of late. It would have been good to see him renew his battles, especially with Lewis, who he's been really close to lately. Yeah,
Jamie Snow currently on 15 points in the driver's standings, and he is currently 8th overall with 15 points. I was actually looking forward to seeing Jamie Snow get in there and renew his rivalries with some of those guys he was battling with in the last round 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, specifically Corey and Lewis, who they were having an epic race at Santa Cruz, so would have been good to see how they went. They've gone from the sun and sand of Santa Cruz over to the cold and damp of England and Northamptonshire.
Yeah, it's at the certain times of the year it does resemble a bit of a dreary place, the old England. And as we said,
one could argue all times of the year, to be honest.
All times, or majority of the times of the year. The only time I think it's probably a good place to be in England is when there's motor racing.
That's true. We're actually, speaking of motor racing, we've only got 5 seconds left in the warm-up, so we will be getting very close to bringing you some racing very soon. Just have a 1 formation lap and then we'll be off.
Absolutely. Well, there it is. The session has expired for this little warm-up session. The drivers that elected to take a driver pit stop before getting back in their cars have returned. And we will be getting underway very, very shortly. Just a reminder, everybody, it's a 15-lap sprint race. There's no pit stops in this race. The only time you need to stop is if you have any damage to repair or if you have a penalty to serve.
We're hearing that there might be a pit stop for tyres, but it's very unlikely. It's definitely not the fastest strategy, but some people are apparently tearing up their tyres quite significantly. Yeah. Probably due to setup issues, but we'll see if that affects everyone.
Yeah, we did have a couple of drivers that we were speaking to during the practice session before we went on air, and a couple of drivers were struggling with the track grip and the level of tyre degradation, but a lot of it was also down to setup and also the fact we had a green track as well at the time, so probably not a lot of rubber laid down.
Last week we saw Heathy keep his tyres alive and didn't get involved in the mess and was able to get through, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Now we're just waiting for a couple of drivers to join the track. So there's Lewis Wedding, he's finally jumped out, and we're waiting for our 12th place man Voda. So has Voda made the start? I'm not sure if he has or not.
Yeah, he has.
He has just made it just in time, so very, very lucky there. Well, gentlemen, let's run through the order for race number 1. Lewis Wedding's out in front, and a dominant time of a 1:15.0, very close to the 14s. Is Greg
livery as well, mate?
Yeah, very
Castrol livery.
Very nice Castrol livery. Greg Nangle, he starts second, and that's a very, very impressive performance from Greg. Second row, Heath Dixon starts from 3rd position. And you see a little Snapchat logo on the side of his car there. Matt Williams, the other Far Canal Racing car, and I'm sure we pronounced that right, even though it sounds a bit weird. It is what it says on screen, so he'll start behind his teammate on the 2nd row. Irambo starts 5th. That's a good, solid result for him, moving up the order late from 8th to 5th in the qualifying session. Here's Corey Ott, starts 6th. He's alongside Irambo, and a very fast starter.
Bit disappointed with that, I reckon, Corey. He was very much talking up his chances to win this race.
He was
he'd be looking to make some moves.
is Matt Schwass, a very quiet achiever, and currently 5th in the point standings, starting 7th. Grant English will start from 8th. Baker starting from 9th, and alongside him running at top 10 is Luke. And then we have row 6, which is David Keane, accompanied by Voda. And then the back row is Aussie, accompanied by Brian Walsh. So we've got 14 runners total. And they're all trying to get some heat into those tyres and some heat into those brakes. They don't want to be sitting on the grid for too long before going into turn 1.
Brian Walsh has spun on the warm-up lap.
Yeah, there he is. He's had a bit of a spin. We have seen this a couple of times. We don't see it all that often, but he's had a bit of a spin just between Prairie and Brooklands corners. And he's catching up to the pack.
Just an interesting tidbit is that I was just looking at the tyres for the front runner there, and he's used 3% of his tyres just in the warm-up lap. So once they get down to the 70s and 60s, they become quite slick. So it could be interesting to see how tyres hold on.
You would have been tempted to dial in a little bit more downforce.
We've got the lights on.
No, we're just getting a couple of guys that are just a bit too far back in their boxes and just having to move forward into position. Well, here we go. The lights are on. 2, 3, and we are away. And it looks like Lewis Wedding got a decent start, which is something we've been talking about for a while, is the pole sitter never usually getting away well, but in this case he has gotten away well, and it looks relatively clean up through the first corner to start with, everybody giving themselves a little bit of room, and yes, we're all through the first turn at least, so that's a positive sign. And now the run down to the Maggots corner and the double in the 90-degree right-hander. Here's Matt Williams. He's just trying to defend from a fast-starting Corey Ott. Corey's got the high ground here and will take position from Matt. If they can stay side by side, that's a wonderful exchange. And it looks like we are incident-free at this point, gentlemen.
Yeah, it was quite a good start from Wedding at the front. He played it perfectly.
Oh, Matt Williams, what a manoeuvre from Matt Williams. He's taken Heath Dixon, but then Heath's got position here for the next corner, which is Bridge, the right-hander, and he will retain a position. And Corey's going with him, so Matt, despite a bit of a good Mevin... Oh, actually, Matt will challenge Corey again here, and they're giving themselves some room. Matt's still on the inside of Corey.
What an exciting first lap so far.
Oh, a little touch there as well.
In and amongst it the whole time, battling with Heathy or not. He's run a bit wide here. Yep. Is up the inside again, but Matt Williams, he's looking very racy today off the start. So, as he runs a little bit wide into the corner there, he'll be trying to size up Ott for a move. But he's going to have to be careful because he's got Rambo right on his tail, and that could go anyway if he makes a small mistake.
Yep, so Corey Ott up 2 positions from the start. As we did say earlier, he is a very quick starter, and one of the cars, I think it was Grant English, going a bit wide there. Corey will be looking to make a move on the points leader, who's ahead of him on track at the moment. And we've had one car go round. Is that Matt Williams?
Yes.
That is Matt Williams. Matt Williams around. There he is. He's just recovering to the track, and he will drop almost all the way to the back of the field. Slots in nicely, and he had a wonderful first lap and a wonderful exchange, but that is not what the doctor will have ordered so early in the race.
I was watching that. He actually just caught a little bit of curb coming through turn 4, and it just lit up the rear. And these things, once you lose the rear on them, they just don't come back once they lose that aero assistance. So he did a full 360. He didn't hit anything, which is pretty lucky. So he should be able to fight his way back through the field.
And we had David Keane also having a spin in a similar position as well. So that's why he's dropped to the back of the field. Matt Williams will have it all to do here, but thankfully the field hasn't gotten too far away, but they're all starting to string out, and it is a lap limited race, so he will need to get on with it.
After 2 laps, Wedding leads by 1 second from Dangle, and then it's 3 seconds to Heath Dixon, and less than a second back is Corey Ott. So the top 4 seconds covering the top 4, so still no time for mistakes for Lewis Wedding. He has to keep his nose clean.
If Greg can stay in touch with Lewis Wedding, he's a chance here because he does look after the car quite well. He drives the car really straight and he doesn't put a lot of stress on those rear tyres. So in a heavy deg track, look for him to come strong towards the end.
Well, he's behind our race leader who we're riding on with. We are watching right now, and Greg is trying to close that gap down. It's under a second. He's just pegged Lewis back ever so slightly on this lap. And as you're saying, Brock, it might come down to tyre condition at the end of the day, and that's what we did see at Santa Cruz. The guys that looked after their tyres toward the end of the race were generally in the better positions and came through and finished in the the first half of the field at the end of the race.
And what you probably don't want to do, and a second is probably a nice gap if you can keep it at that way. If he gets too close to the back of the wedding car, he's going to start losing aero, and that's going to scrub the front tyres more aggressively than if he's able to use that front wing.
Well, he's doing an excellent job at keeping the gap stable, because the last lap, Wedding went through with a 1:16.137, and Nangle did a 1:16.129. So
we just got a report, sorry to cut you off, gentlemen, that Corey Ott's gone around somewhere on track. We did see a little bit of a smoke show from behind the scenes. Oh, and there's...
contact with English as
he's
well.
having some contact there as well as he's trying to recover. So Corey Ott was up in 5th place, and he did a full 360 and caught it. We saw a smoke show coming from, I think it was the Cops corner, the very first corner, and somehow he's managed to do a 360 and just get on with it, which is a mighty impressive save. So he hasn't lost too far out, too many positions as a result of that, but it has set him back a fair bit. And here he is on screen.
It's not ideal. He's now locked in battle with English and Rambo, who have both... Rambo's lost a position from the start. I believe he lost it to Ott, actually, because Ott was started further down the field. Actually, they've swapped. They were 5th and 6th, and now they're 6th and 5th. And Ott is looking very racy here with Brian English. He's getting right up underneath him, and he's probably going to have a dive into turn 1, although it is very difficult to get through on turn 1 because it's such a fast corner into Cops.
Well, he's got to be alongside to have a go, and he's not quite alongside to have a go. He needs to follow and follow well, and he's done very well to follow him there. And the next opportunity is down here at Maggots at turns 2 and 3, and through turn 2 they go. And can he hold on and have a go at 3? No, he doesn't. He thinks better of it, and he's lost it again. He's lost it again, and he's hasn't lost it too badly, but he just needs to be careful with the rejoin here. We've had who's gone around there? Is that Rambo? Yes, Rambo's gone around as well.
Luke made contact. Luke spun as well.
And there's a few contact as well. And Brian Walsh has been disqualified, and we've got a full course caution. Have we? No. The yellow flag just flashed up and it's gone away. So we thought we had a local yellow flag. Brian Walsh disqualified. I'm not sure what has happened there, but he's obviously had a little indiscretion with somebody, or he's caused an issue somewhere along the line. We'll see if we can get our man on the ground to have a bit of a look at what's going on there.
Amazingly, despite all this with Ott, he's had that spin, but because of all the other action that happened, he's only lost 1 position from that. Baker's been gifted about 4 positions in all this. And
I just had a look at the original Ott spin. He was coming through turn 1, hit the exit curve or the exit ripple strip on curve 1. And it literally just bounced the car, and he spun. He almost helicoptered on the spot. It was such a quick spin. Didn't lose a lot of time from it. It was almost like a half a second spin. So.
We're hearing that Ott has been complaining about the rear tyres already, and just having a look at the data we have.
And here he goes off track as well, yeah. So there's a few guys having issues.
He's already down to 72% on his rear tyres, which is not what you want in a track like this, because you need to get, in these cars especially, you need to get the power down to be able to continue, and that's what we've been seeing, is he's just lighting up those rear tyres and spinning. And when you compare his tyres to the people around him, he's used so much more, so I think that might be a setup issue for Ott.
Yeah. We're just returning to the front of the field here. Greg Nangle is really hounding Lewis Wedding here now. The gap is under half a second, and Greg's got the bit between the teeth here, and Lewis, could he also be struggling with some tyre wear as well? I mean, we've had a couple of guys complain about it, and some guys will push the envelope a little bit harder than others, but there's still plenty of time to go here. And these two have cleared away from the points leader, Heath Dixon, by over 5 seconds now.
Yeah, there is a possibility that Wedding could also be trying to preserve his rubber as well, just to get it to the end of the race.
Just having a look, he's not doing as good a job as Nangle is, though. Nangle has slightly better tyres, despite being the one who is following here. So we'll see how this goes, because these tyres do start to hit a bit of a cliff, and they become like driving around on ice. So it'll be interesting to see who hits that point first. And yeah, you can't afford to pit in a race like this because it takes so long. And
very long pit entry and exit here as well. So you're right. You not only do you lose the time in the pits, but you actually lose the transit time. It's quite a long transit time through the pit lane as well as having to do the stop.
We've got a reason for the disqualification for Walsh. Apparently he had a spin and wasn't aware of which direction he was going and went the wrong direction along the track and was disqualified for that, because that is an understandably dangerous situation that people don't really stand for, so he was immediately disqualified.
He was right toward the back was Brian Walsh, and we did catch a little half spin from him at the back of the field just as we were cycling through. We weren't quite aware that he recovered in the wrong direction. Last time around, Lewis Wedding, his last lap was a 16.5. Greg Nangle also in a similar vein, but just lost a little bit of touch there. There was an odd lap for Lewis as well. That's why the gap closed up 2 laps ago. He did a 17. That's what that allowed Greg to close up quite substantially. Now just losing a bit of touch again.
Baker's starting to go backwards a bit after getting all the way up to 3rd at one point. He has just been passed by Ott in bridge and is becoming under pressure, immense pressure from Schwass heading into Maggots.
Well, just watching here on screen, here's Greg. Greg's gone to the outside. Greg's gone to the outside, but that means Lewis will have the high ground on the racing line. Greg will try and get another... You had a nice toe down that straight there, did Greg Nangle. But he's still hounding. And this battle's probably going to rage on to the flag if it keeps going the way that it is, and it's shaping up to be a very nice battle indeed.
Nangle just has so much more confidence than Wedding at the moment. He's just throwing it in there and giving Wedding a lot to think about. Nangle is probably thinking back to that last race where Wedding led for a decent chunk of the way and then just lost it near the end. And Nangle's probably thinking, I want to do that, but I don't want to end up like last time where Heathy got through on both of us and lose the race to Heathy. Heathy's probably just thinking, this is just what I've done last race, it'll work again. We'll see how that strategy goes for it.
Yeah, no, he's...
Nangle is the professor of Automobilista Australia. He looks after the car, he looks after the tyres. He's desperate to do well in this series without being able to compete in the Thursday night series. So you will see him not want to throw away points. He's got a real level head on him, but if there's a win there, he'll certainly go for it as well.
He is, and Lewis Wedding that last time around did another 17. He had a very, very poor middle sector, and that's where where Greg got by him, even just for a split second.
Lewis lit up the rear tyres coming out of the hairpin there.
Yeah,
it's
he did.
Not going to be doing them any good.
He did, and that could be the first sign that the grip is starting to fade. Lewis was one of the ones that likes to push the envelope a little bit. And we probably would expect that the tyres may give way.
Ott is round again. He's having absolutely terrible time with those rears. He's been passed by 3 people. He's been passed by Baker and Schwass, and Luke is right on his tail now.
He is. We've just cut back to take a look there. We've missed the spin, but Ott having a terrible time. This car must be an absolute handful if he's gone around I think it's 3 times now.
I think that he's got a setup that's very fast for a single lap, potentially, but it just chews through tyres like they're made of sawdust. It's not working for him, and he just needs to be so careful that it's causing him to lose time and positions.
Corey's driving technique is also one that would be described as slideways.
Slideways.
So when he's in a touring car, GT3 car, or Porsche Cup car, he's able to get away with that a little bit more. With the open wheeler, has said, once you start pushing on this rear a little bit too much and getting too sideways, you lose that aero assistance. It will destroy the rear tyres more and more.
Ever the optimist, though, we're hearing over the radio that Ott is talking up a win in race 2. So I'm not sure if that's being optimistic to the point of foolishness, but it's confident, that's for sure. That's the best way to describe it. It's very confident.
Well, the man on screen at the moment is the current points leader, Heath Dixon. He's currently 3rd on the road and just minding his own business at the minute. He's got a 7.5 second gap to the guys ahead and about the same behind to Grant English, and probably quite comfortable and set to take a nice haul of 15 points here. It'll be enough to put him up to 55, and he'll comfortably maintain his lead at the head of the championship if he continues to go along at the rate that he has and finish where he currently is, 3rd on the road.
Scott, looking at Nangle, he is still just on the back of Wedding. He's braking later still. He's getting on the accelerator earlier, but it's just very hard to get through on these cars sometimes. But he is applying that pressure. He's turning the width right up and is hoping for that mistake from Wedding. who we know he has made those mistakes before, and he'll be desperate to not make those mistakes this time because he wants a race win.
Matt Williams has lost his rear wing coming through turn 1.
So Matt Williams having a bit of a hard time as well. You saw he had a spin early on in the piece and had to recover. So just bluffing. And actually, there he is, just on screen as the two leaders come through, just crawling along without a rear wing. So he'll be keen just to get back to the pits, try and get that replaced, and get out and try and grab a few points if he can. We only have 14 runners in this field.
Blown a tyre as well, Nether. That is having some serious handling issues on the way back to the pit.
Yeah, so let's have a look here. So he's crabbing along, obviously missing a rear wing, but doing well to stay off the racing line. Looks like all 4 tyres are intact. He's probably just taking it very, very cautiously. I don't know if they're going to repair the damage to that car, guys.
Yeah, no, that could be terminal, that one.
That could possibly be terminal, but he's got to try and somehow get across the track here to the right-hand side, which is where he's got to cut across the racing line now and get into the pits. But he just doesn't want to upset anybody. And there he goes. He's done it safely. That's well done from Matt Williams. That's sensible driving. You just got to stay off the racing line and take your opportunities when they present themselves to get across and do everything by the book, and that is 100% by the book.
Just looking at the timing screens, Ott is a second a lap faster than Schwass and Baker in front of him, who have both passed him twice, I believe, when he spun. But he is catching them at a second a lap, and there are 3 laps remaining after the one we are currently on. So there's a good chance he will catch them and attempt to pass them. Whether that will result in another spin or not remains to be seen. But he's definitely got a chance to join this battle between Baker and Schwass for 5th and 6th.
Well, we will keep an eye on that with interest. He is a hard charger, Corey, and you can see there, he can actually see the carrot dangling in front of him, which is Schwass who's first on the hit list, and then Baker is the next one after that. But he's going to have to reel them in rather quickly and make those moves awfully quickly. He'll be kicking himself for some of those mistakes and probably just needs to tone it back a notch in race number 2. But
the leaders are coming up to lap voter, so this could be interesting. He seems to have gotten out the way quite well, though.
Yeah, so he's done
very well there.
Yeah, he's done well. He's realised that he needs to be a little bit better than what he has been in the last few weeks, and sensibly, we just caught the back end of it, just getting out of the way. And I think a few people in the pit garages will be breathing a sigh of relief. Our man on the ground stairs there certainly is.
The one person who isn't breathing a sigh of relief is Wedding at the moment, because he's still being monstered by an angle. The gap hasn't been more than 0.7 of a second for about 4 or 5 laps now, and the tyres are really starting to wear down now. Their rear tyres are both below 50% for both drivers, and it's going to be so easy to spin at this point. You're under the pressure. You're trying not to let the person behind you get too close, but you just put too much throttle on, and you'll be round, and there'll be nothing you can do about it. So this will be plaguing the thoughts of both of them.
It will be.
And, it's become a battle of wheels.
Under brakes into the hairpin is absolutely mega. He loses through the switchback, but then he just gains it all back under brakes. So if that's a pretty positive thing for him going in the last couple of laps. If he's got a braking advantage into one of the best passing spots on the track, Lewis could have his hands full in the next couple of laps.
There's a bit of a scrappy final sector there for Nangle. He's dropped back a little bit from Wedding.
Yeah, he's giving him a bit of breathing space now, so the gap's out to a second, and he really needs to get back in touch, because this is the penultimate lap for race number 1, and he's not quite close enough to get a slipstream. I have a go down here into turn number 7, the Abbey hairpin, but he really needs to use those brakes and close that gap, and he does a little bit, but it's not quite enough. They've got some more lap traffic coming up again. Matt Williams has managed to get himself going, so the crew's managed to repair that rear wing. He's out in 13th, even though he's a lap down. He will still acquire some points for that, so good result for the Williams pit crew to get him back out again.
Yeah, they did a good job. It obviously every point counts. You never know what's going to happen. As we've got the leaders passing Aussie, he's gotten out the way quite nicely.
Yep. So he's
done. Nangle might have been a little bit compromised getting past.
Well, Lewis has taken out one of the side markers there, getting a little bit too close to the edge of the track. So final lap has commenced.
Sure. Yeah, last lap. Wedding just has to keep his nose clean here and not make any mistakes, and he'll be home clear, and he'll have his first win of the AMS Oz F3 season.
It will be his
That beautiful
first win.
Castrol car.
It will be his first win. He currently has 0 points. He did contest the first round of the series, Lewis Wedding at Santa Cruz. Unfortunately, did not finish the first race, which we didn't catch on our broadcast cameras, and did not start the second race, so therefore 0 points. But he looks set to take a good points haul here.
Those rears are really struggling. I'm watching the tyres light up pretty much out of every slow exit at the moment. So
it's interesting to see Heath Dixon in third place being overtaken by the lap runner Matt Williams, because Matt Williams has fresh tyres.
So they would have replaced those tyres at the stop. So here we are, final couple of turns. Lewis Wedding will come through the last 2 turns here, through Luffield, onto Woodcote. He'll hang on after a bit of an intense battle with Greg Nangle for the top 2 positions, but he wins race number 1 from Greg Nangle. Here's Heath Dixon. We cut to him coming through the last few turns as well.
Sorry, because we go back down the field.
Oh,
and
Corey,
Schwartz are having a big battle.
Yeah, there's Ott, and then
corner. Ott he's cooked it too much. Schwartz has got switched back underneath him. Ott is going to have one more go if he can get the acceleration off this final corner, but it doesn't look like it. Looks like Schwartz has managed to defend it. So come through the last corner here. It's going to be very close, but Schwartz just holds off Ott.
Does hold off Ott
at the end there.
So a very, very close finish there. We just caught the back end of it. Ott had sent one up the inside at Brooklands and then just overcooked it, and Schwartz was back through on the inside.
He did say he was going to lick it, stamp it, and send it. Unfortunately, it was returned to sender with Schwartz coming back through to take the position off him.
And that's
really mature driving by Schwartz there. He could have panicked and defended too hard, and they both could have contact. He saw Ott coming, just left the door open, and Ott cooked it, and he was just able to sneak back up the inside. So they both finished the race, no problem at all. That's actually quite exceptional in the last lap. There would have been many a driver that would have closed the door there, and neither of them would have finished. So he's thinking championship, and he's got a good haul of points again.
Well, there's a little bit of a little bit of banter between the drivers on the team radios at the moment. They think that it was a bit tight, and Ott believes that Schwartz turned down on him, so there might be a little bit of discussion, but then also lost it on the curb. So there may be a few words exchanged at the end of that race, but your race 1 winner, here he is on screen, and his first win in the AMS Australia F3 series goes to Lewis Wedding, and some much deserved 20 points. That will be music to his ears. It finally gets him on the board in this series.
Yeah, I think he might have had a boring race, but he had a championship driving race. He kept his nose clean. He didn't do anything wrong, and he made sure that he wasn't gonna lose those valuable points that he needs, because he has that points lead. He can afford to be a bit cautious.
Well, his 15 points that he gets for finishing in third puts him up to 55 points and maintains his lead at the head of the drivers' standings.
Just having a look at the replay for the Ott and Schwartz argument, for want of a better term there. Schwartz definitely didn't turn down on him. He left the door open. He went to turn into the corner and Ott sent it, to use his own words. Schwartz was pretty kind to him there. He probably could have turned down a little bit harder, so I don't think there's anything to answer for either driver in that one, if I'm honest.
All right, well, that's positive news to see that those guys will be not paying a visit to the stewards room. And an interesting point for... actually, I leave that information probably is a little bit inaccurate, but actually, no, it is accurate. Sorry, I do apologise. Greg Nangle actually sat the fastest lap of that race, just marginally over Lewis Wedding. So he said a 16.129 to a 16.137. So very, very close, but just goes to show you how closely matched those two guys were at the head of the field.
Yeah, it was in the 5th lap, I believe, or thereabouts, and they set their 2 laps at exactly the same time as well. So there's nothing between them apart from the position. You've got the feeling if Nangle was in front of Wedding, it would have been 1-2 Nangle Wedding, because they're just both so closely matched at the moment. It's great to watch.
That turned out to be a lot closer than expected. I would have thought after qualifying we would have seen Lewis run away with that, but Nangle certainly put up a fight to him. So hopefully for race 2 we see a little bit more of that.
We do hope we see a bit more of that, and we're just waiting for our host broadcaster to move us into race number 2, or qualifying 2 for race number 2, I should say. In the meantime, we'll see if we can get a couple of guys in to have a little bit of a discussion with us as to how their races have gone. So I'm not sure if Bags, you'd like to run along and see if you can find anybody for us.
There are a
We've
few
got
people in here.
We are a few
We've
people in
got-
here.
We've got Heath, who's just barged in and grabbed a microphone here, and apparently wants to be interviewed. Third place, a bit of a boring third place for you today for race one, Heathy. Obviously, Wedding and Nangle were a fair way ahead, and then behind you with Ott and Baker and all those sort of mixing and matching meant that you didn't have any much pressure from behind, so you sort of had to amuse yourself and drive for the points.
I was waiting for some people to sing me a song so that I didn't fall asleep, but it was a lonely race.
Yeah, we heard over the radio you complaining about not having anyone to battle. Do you reckon you can?
I wouldn't say complaining.
Do you reckon you can keep up with Nangle and Wedding in race 2?
Oh, keep up? No. Maintain a slow droppage back? Yeah. If that makes sense.
I think anytime you can finish on the podium without a battle, mate, you'd be pretty happy with that, yeah?
Yeah, well, look, that's why I said I'm not complaining. I'll take it. So it'd be nice to be a little bit closer to 1 and 2.
Well, I wouldn't be complaining too much, Heath. You've 15 points for third place is still going to keep you at the head of the points table at the moment, and by quite some margin as well. And that's something positive to take out of, even though finishing third place is not what you're after, but it's something to be proud of.
Good to hear. Thank you for the information.
Well,
It looks like qualifying has started for qualifying 2. We've been left a bit in the lurch there. They've gone onto it a lot quicker than usual, so we did have Corey Ott and Wedding lined up, but unfortunately they'll have to get back for their qualifying session. We'll try and talk to them after race 2.
well, right we are. We'll see if we can get a few guys in here and talk about both races after that. But we're now watching just a couple of the guys who are on circuit. Excuse me. Matt Williams.
With Matt running the series now, you'll probably see those things happening a little bit quicker. He's pretty keen to get these things moving on without as much delay as there has been in the past.
Yeah, before we had to have everyone vote to move on to the next session, but it seems that Matt has instilled a bit more of a dictatorship in that sense and is able to advance the sessions himself.
Yeah, somebody gave him the code, so look out.
Well, he's the self-proclaimed CEO of this series now, as he likes to be called, El Chief.
Yeah, as the founder of the series, I've found that a little bit funny because I've always maintained that it's everyone's community and everyone has a voice. So Matt's come in and changed the order of merit there a little bit.
Just stepping it up a notch, I think. Even though you're still going to be involved in the series, Brock, it's I guess he kind of thinks it's his own playground now, doesn't he?
Oh, that's it. He's doing quite a good job as well. I have to say he's not as busy as I am, so that's a good starting point to be able to do a better job than what I was doing. And he loves it as well. So I think under Matt, the whole organisation is going to go stronger and stronger.
Excellent. Well, he's on screen at the moment and coming down to the hairpin to try and set himself a time. Oh, just a little bit of a wiggle there. And gather it up and press
Matt
on.
will be the first person to come through and set a time in this session. We're just hearing from our men, pit lane stairs, that Ott has decided to run Wedding's setup this race, which will hopefully mean he'll be kinder on his tyres. But in Stairs' expert opinion, he would think that Nangle's setup would be the better setup. He reckons that just looking at the data, it's a bit more of a consistent setup, and Wedding's setup might be more of a hot lap setup, so it'll be great for getting it on pole, but less good for the race distance. Although we did see that Wedding was able to hold on there.
I guarantee you there's not a chance in hell that Nagle's sharing that setup either.
Well,
So good luck.
The professor doesn't want to share anything. Now,
That's it.
we only had 14 runners in that race, gentlemen, and we pay points down to 15. But do we pay points for a DNF? I'm not 100% sure on the rules. Would you be able to clear that up for us, please?
No, change the formula on this one now. So if DNF is the result, then the points paid to 0. So regardless of finishing position, or regardless of how much percentage of the race you've done, because the races are so short in Formula 3, we didn't see any reason, even if you crash on the last lap, to pay points for DNF.
Well,
That's a bit harsh, I'll be honest. But I feel if it's because isn't it 90% usually? So let's see if you finish the last couple of laps, you should be okay.
75% of the race distance is normally where it's classified, and 90% of the full points awarded. But Brian Walsh, the only DNF there, did not finish that race after finishing only about half a dozen laps. So probably well outside that bracket anyway.
Yeah, we're actually following the Australian Formula 4 point structure or points route on that. So if you're good enough to race in Formula 4 in Australia and you crash on the last lap, regardless of how many laps you've done, they actually do longer races than this as well. So yeah, no change for us. It's a
is it going to be applied retroactively, or is it only from these races going forwards?
No real need to apply it retroactively, if I'm honest. There was a couple last race, but they weren't in points paying positions anyway, so that was no problem.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Well, speaking of the Professor, Greg Nangle is on screen at the moment and sets his best lap is now 16.353. Good enough for third at the moment. Matt Williams' time he set earlier is up in second, and surprise, surprise, look who's on provisional pole at the moment, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's Lewis Wing, although not as fast as he went in the first qualifying session. He's only 3/10 ahead of his nearest rival now, instead of a whole second. So
well, he's not yet as fast, I think, is probably what we should be saying, because he's coming up to the Sector 2 split right now, and he's actually off on this lap, so surprisingly slower than what we're probably expecting. But there's still plenty of time left. We've got two guys that are sitting in the pits at the minute. We've got Greg Nangle just watching and waiting, and also Heath Dixon sitting down there in 8th position after the initial runs. As we've still got Lewis.
Nangle's back out on track, and he's just been pipped by Corey Ott, who's gone 3rd. So that setup is clearly working for him at the moment, because he set his fastest time of the weekend so far.
Well, Corey Ott has jumped up into 3rd position as he's now in the garage, but he's set a time there. A few guys have now ventured. Greg's ventured back out for another lap. They're just on an out lap at the moment. Well, we haven't spoken too much about Baker, but he's currently 5th, and he was 4th overall in the point standings coming into this race. So nice, quiet and consistent achiever from the ARW League.
Baker is unbelievably consistent across any division that we're running right now. He's the quiet achiever. He doesn't make a lot of noise, and he's in the top 5 so often it's not even funny, and you kind of like, yep, cool, I've got Baker, I'm doing all right. But then at the end of the race, he's 3-4 spots in front of you just by keeping his nose clean. So again, mature driver, level-headed driver, and if he's going to do that, he's going to finish strong in every championship that we run.
Always wants to be one of the consistent ones, and he's actually just backed it off with the pit lane limiter there, so that's not going to be a new lap for him. When we look,
yeah, it's always good for Baker with consistent. We've seen how in race 2 yesterday, race 2 last round, consistency got Heath both wins because he didn't spin off. You've got a feeling that Baker, if he can keep up this consistency and maybe raise the pace just a little bit, he's got every chance of a race win, especially when the tyres are always so close to the edge at the end of these races.
Everybody currently, or majority of the field, are currently doing out laps at the moment, looking for some room on track to try and set a bit more of a truly representative lap time. We're still looking at the board at Lewis Wedding's time of a 15.8 and wondering if he's going to even get close to that 15.0 that he did in qualifying 1. But as of yet, doesn't look like he's going to get there, but he's still got time on his side for this qualifying session to replicate that feat. 2 runners yet to set a time, Grant English and Voda, the only 2 guys yet to set a time, although we expect as we look through the field that here's Voda, and he's finally set a time, and Grant's the only one who hasn't set a time now, but he's currently on track heading down to Maggots Corner.
I'm wondering if Lewis has made a change to the setup of the car, just to help it settle it down a little in race. It might sacrifice a little bit of quality speed to have a more consistent race car.
So we're looking at this from a point of view that Lewis was being hounded all race by Greg, and he probably wants a bit more long run pace in that car. before we get into the race this time and try and serve him a bit better. And we've got somebody around just on the exit Abbey there. Is that Corey Ott?
It is, yeah.
So it's Corey Ott just going around on the exit of the Abbey hairpin. And as we were talking just a few moments ago, this man is lighting up the screens again, but he's looking like he's going to set a better time. Lewis Wedding is not that far ahead of his best time at the moment, but he's certainly showing on our screens that he's about to better his current lap.
He was 200ths up in the first sector and 200ths up still in the second sector, so if anything, this is consistent to his last lap.
Yep.
As he comes across the line,
and he finds
almost 2 tenths faster.
He finds a little bit of time, so just inches away.
Just before the hairpin, just before bridge, where you come back onto the main circuit, Wedding did run quite wide. That was where, as you come into Abbey, where Corey Ott went wide. He did go wide in that corner and lost some time. So I reckon this could be another one of those, or not this lap apparently, because he's 10th down, but he's definitely got more time in the bag. It's just whether or not he can string that lap together.
Well, the man who shares the front row with him at the moment provisionally is Greg Nangle, and Greg's up on his PB, but he's 2 tenths down on Lewis's time at the moment as he sweeps through bridge.
He's so close to the 115s as well.
Well, here we go. He's actually found some time. He's found some time in Sector 2, and he's actually up on Lewis's time at the moment. So
it's all down to these last 3 or 4 corners, and they're probably the most difficult corners on the track to do fast, because you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for the throttle, and you just have to wait for so long and then absolutely nail it. He comes through the final corner here. He's across the line. Let's see what sort of time he can do.
No, he lost it all.
He's lost a lot. He lost 4 tenths, well, 4.5 tenths in that last sector. It's it just seems that Wedding's car is much more planted throughout last sector. We saw that's where Nangle was losing his time in race 1 as well. So clearly that last set of corners just doesn't work for Nangle as well.
No.
I would suggest that Wedding's put a little bit of rear wing on the car as well, because it's looking stronger again through Sector 3. That's where your downforce is going to be playing in. He's losing a little bit through Sector 2, where the straight line speed is paramount, and that's where Greg made some time back up. But just watching Lewis throughout those last couple of laps, he was very, very clean through Sector 3 without too many issues at all.
Yeah,
Nangle is still going for it at the moment. He's up on his personal best again, and only a 10th down on Wedding's time currently.
Gents, I just wanted to take a look at...
Sorry, he's a 10.5 up on Wedding's time now, but coming into that last sector again.
Well, we've got Irambo doing something similar at the minute. He just launched himself from 8th up to 5th, and he was setting a very, very impressive Sector 1 time. He was under the benchmark set by our pole sitter for Sector 1.
He set a purple Sector 1, Nangle set a purple Sector 2. He's coming across the line now. We'll see what he does. Oh, he's a 10th off, but he does go second.
Yep, so
he does go...
Rambo's lost it all in the middle sector, so he's lost his advantage in the middle sector, but in his mind, this man who's only had a wheel for a very short period of time and has recently buried the hatchet with Matt Williams is on a charge and moving up the field in leaps and bounds. Does he increase his position? No, he doesn't. Not on that lap.
It just seems that the third sector is where everyone is losing their time. Wedding is mighty in that last sector. And he must feel a little bit threatened by Nangle, because he's gone out again. Last qualifying session, with 5 minutes to go, he was putting his feet up and having a cup of wonderful English tea. But
Matt Williams going around at the hairpin there. He's just going to have to sit there and wait to see who comes through. But no, he's reset back. So Lewis has gone out again and is out on track. Now Greg's currently in the garage. I don't know if he's going to run again. He needs to get out if he's going to have another stab at this.
He's got about 30 seconds to get out before until he won't be able to get a lap in.
So Lewis comes to the line, and he's on another fly, so he'll get 2 bites at the cherry here. And Greg's not going to get out in time, so I think that's the end of Greg Nangle's qualifying session, has he?
He does still have a few seconds to get out, but it doesn't look like he's planning on going anywhere. He will be... is probably about now that he's out of time. So Nangle is not going to try and beat Wedding's time. But back down the field, there are some other people who are very close. We've got from Heath Dixon in 4th to Oh, geez, it's
Grant English has just moved up. So Grant English
English,
moves up 2 positions. He's now up to 7th provisionally. He's still got time on the
we've
board.
We've got 4 people within a tenth of each other, within 2/10 of each other. But Heath Dixon on a 116.194, Rambo on a 116.209, Ott on a 116.261, and English on a 116.324. And they are all, apart from English, out on track, so they can all jump up positions. And Wedding is set a purple first sector and is on it again.
He's set a purple second sector as well. He's got a 10.5 on his own time at the moment, and comes to the line and lost it all in the last sector. So yet again, the last sector proves to be the Achilles heel for anybody trying to set a time. Oh, and he goes very wide on the exit there, and they'll probably put pay dirt to any more attempts at trying to lower his own benchmark. And
Even
it does.
Wedding can't beat Wedding's own final sector time. It was that much of an amazing final sector. It's 2 seconds faster than Angle's best effort. It's 2/10 of a second faster than Angle's best effort in that last sector.
And we're seeing more and more a few people struggling to put the power down out of that second last turn, which is Luffield, and come up onto the main straight. Well, Matt Williams is on screen at the moment, and he's currently holding down 3rd position ahead of Heath Dixon in 4th, and they're both going for hot laps again to see if they can improve.
Time has expired, so we've only got 6 people left out on track.
Yep. Well, Matt,
I believe Ott is coming across the line, and Ott jumps up to 3rd.
So
He's
that's
still half a second down on Wedding, but he's jumped 3 people, I believe.
he has with a late surge, jumps up to 3rd. We missed that on screen. We were looking to see who was on track. Oh, and Matt Williams has gone way wide, so that's not going to register another lap for him. But here's our points leader, Heath Dixon, coming up to sector 2. And look at this, he's actually 2/10 under the pole time as it stands at the moment, 3/10 up on his PB. So can he launch himself up the order? He's currently
This will be incredible if he can.
He's currently situated in 5th.
This is the last sector, the one that everyone has not been able to match Wedding on.
Can he stitch
He's
it
thrown
together?
over the last corner.
No, I don't think he has. Is he backed out? No, he lost it. Somewhere he's lowered his PB. He's got himself up to 3rd, so jumps Corey Ott, but he was under that time by 2/10, and somehow he's lost 6/10 in that last sector.
We saw so many people under Wedding's time coming into that last sector, but they just weren't able to convert it. As Brock said, Wedding has probably got a much nicer setup for that last sector and for the tight sections versus everyone else. So it's just everyone else probably has a bit more pace on the straights and the fast corners, but that slow section, Wedding really is the master.
Yeah. Well, it was an understeer that cost Heath Dixon in that last corner, or that in the Luffield corner, and just slid it a bit wide. He needed to stay a little bit further to the inside, and then had to wait to put the power down, and that's where he lost his time. Second race in a row, though, it's Wedding and Nangle on the front row in the same positions that they started race 1 from, and Heath Dixon starting from 3rd as well. So,
interestingly, Corey Ott, with that setup that he borrowed from Wedding, has jumped up to 4th now after, I believe it was 8th in the last qualifying he was in. And he clearly wants a bit more practice with that setup because he is the first one at the pit lane ready to exit for the warm-up session.
Well, we spoke a little bit earlier in the session on Thursday night about overdriving the car. We saw that Lewis overdrove the car a little bit when he was trying to hunt down that pole time from Brenton Hobson in the qualifying sessions after they were reset, and he wasn't a happy man. So in a tin top car, it's a little bit easier to overdrive the car, but in these things, if you push, they bite.
Absolutely. I think I was absolute proof of that at Santa Cruz a couple of weeks ago, where I've spent my whole sim racing career in tin tops. I've never really got too involved in an open wheel car, and things like you just can't take curbs, and you really do need to drive them straight, which is why they suit someone like a Greg Nangle, who's a beautiful straight driver. But yeah, they're gonna hurt if you overdrive them, and I think we saw that with Corey in race 1 as well. Corey, who is a slideways driver, if he can wrap his head around not jumping on the throttle, then he should be all good.
I do think that part of his issue was set up last race, though, because he's chewing through his tyres a lot less now.
Well, we just perched ourselves here on the exit of the Maggots complex and looking over the island chicane, just as qualifying has finished and we're now into the warm-up. A few guys just on the track here. Well, we saw finally somebody managed to convert from pole position, led all the laps, and actually got away from pole cleanly, which was the first time in a long time that the pole sitter hasn't been swamped. Can he do it again? That is the question.
It remains to be seen. As we've got 3 minutes left in this practice session at the moment. 3 minutes and 20 seconds to be precise. A few people out on track just doing a final shakedown before the race, just trying to iron out any kinks they might have, just get a bit more of a feel for the car.
There's a couple of guys doing some practice starts on the grid as well, so we're just watching Rambo on the left-hand side of the grid, just trying to do a bit of a practice start. So this is something that some of the guys in the session probably aren't used to. They don't do a lot of these practice starts, and it's probably good to get it under your belt and just make sure all your systems are right and you're happy and comfortable enough to get away from the line comfortably. And we've got a nice view here as we look over the shoulders of, and it's Rambo, and is that Matt Williams there as well? No, it's not Matt Williams, sorry.
Baker.
It's Baker. So the two guys of ARW stature getting themselves ready to launch away on a practice start, and let's just see how long an 11s they can lay.
It's interesting to see people getting these, but not many people try the practice starts or pit entry practice. Obviously, that's not so much of an issue in the series where we don't have pitting in, but we have seen a lot of, even when people have unscheduled pit stops in these series, a lot of drive-through penalties for speeding the pit lane because people haven't practiced their pit-ins.
Well, we didn't actually have to call one this session. We only had one DNF, which was Brian Walsh, and we had Matt Williams manage to get in and out successfully and replace a rear wing, and it didn't incur a speeding penalty, which is always good to see. But we did have a couple on the Thursday night Super Series telecast, and they're not fun.
The guys are getting better and better at pit stops. I think they're starting to learn. It's not really worth the risk to make up a half a tenth a second on the way into pit lane, because if you stuff it up, then you lose 20 seconds on a drive-through. So it's better to be safe than sorry, I think.
I think you're right. It is better to be safe than sorry when it comes to navigating the pits. And a common misconception, and probably a lot of the guys in the early start of the AMS Australia series took to realise, was that the pit lane speed limiter does not brake the car for you. It just simply limits the engine revs, and the car naturally slows down of its own accord. So you've really got to be on the brake nice and early to get yourself down to the pit lane speed limit and engage the pit lane speed limiter, and then subsequently wait until you cross the line where the traffic light is before you release it. And we've seen incidents on both occasions where drivers just don't put the limiter on early enough, or they release it too early on the exit, and that's what costs them the penalty.
Well, looking at this practice start we've had here, we've had Rambo and Brian Walsh both spin around in their practice first lap, so both of them will probably be hoping to avoid that in the actual race, because
we actually saw someone lose a wing as well there. I think it might have been Baker. Yeah, Baker lost a wing as a result of that as well. But it's only practice starts for in the warm-up. 30 seconds remaining. Somebody's wiped out the cones near the Luffield corner, and actually quite a lot of spinners. So you're pretty right. Some of these guys that have probably gone on with setup changes since race one are probably looking to see how they react with a full tank of fuel, and a few guys coming to grief as a result of trying those new setups.
My personal philosophy for this would be do your qualifying setup and then just add a little bit extra wing into it. So maybe go up 2 or 3 clicks on front and rear wing for the race, because that's going to preserve your tyres and give you. It may cost you a little bit of pace, but you're never as quick in your race as what you are in qualifying anyway. So what you're looking to do is manage that rubber until the end, especially around here. So.
Well, session for warm-up is over, and we're about to launch into another formation lap prior to the start of race number 2. Our front row remains the same as what it was for race number 1, with Wedding on pole and Greg Nangle alongside in second. We'll see them shortly on the formation lap. Still got 14 runners, which is good. In the last couple of weeks, we've had less runners in race number 2 than in race number 1. We've got the same starting in both races this week. That's a good thing. Just waiting for all the cars to grid up here before we take you through the formation laps.
I have the points here, mate, if you want to grab those before we start off on the formation lap.
Well, give us a rundown. We know who the points leader currently is, but let us know who's sitting directly behind him.
Still Heath Dixon on 55 points, Corey Ott on 37, Baker's on 36, Johnny's on 34, Greg Nangle's on 34, Grant English is on 29, Luke's on 22, Lewis Wedding on 20, Matthew Schwass on 19, and Matt Williams on 16 will round it out. We'll go into further detail post-race.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Bagsy, why don't you take us through the order for race number 2? Well, or not. I think we might be under a commentator pit stop for young Bagsy, or he's gone off to enjoy the hospitality.
My apologies. We had a microphone issue.
Oh, there we go.
First, we've got Lewis Wedding with a second pole for this round with a brilliant lap. Nangle couldn't quite get him in position 2. He'll be hoping to overtake Wedding at some point and win this race because he was so close last race. Heath Dixon in third, a good third last race. He will be hoping that the people in front make a mistake because he probably can't live with them on pace today. Corey Ott, after many spins in race 1, is starting from 4th and will be hoping to get up to the front and possibly grab a podium. Matt Williams had a few spins as well and lost a rear wing. He's had a strong qualifying again. He'll be hoping for a better race than last one. Rambo kept his nose clean last race to a decent extent, and he'll be hoping for another nice clean race this one. Grant English is in 7th with another middle of the pack qualifier. Baker is in 8th. His consistency will be hoping to shine through again and get him some more positions. Schwass is in 9th. He just kept Corey Ott behind him. He'll be hoping for another good race. Luke is in 10th. Our 6th row is Keane and Aussie, and our final row is Brian Walsh and Boda, who appears to have started. He's doing a practice start at the back.
We also got word through that Rambo just made it to the grid in time as well. This is the timer was counting down, so very, very lucky to make it there. Otherwise, he would have been forced to start from the pit lane. And
second race in a row, Rando's been a bit, or second round, where he's been a bit sluggish in getting onto the grid for race 2.
Well, in actual fact, he was disqualified from the second race in Santa Cruz for not only he made it to the pit lane in time, but then he overstepped the pit lane starting point and was subsequently disqualified. So he didn't take part in race number 2 in Santa Cruz. However, we've got race number 2 at Silverstone International here on our hands, and the lights are going on. And we are green, and away we go. And it looks like the pole sitter got a very, very good launch again. That time Greg got a very poor launch. He's still having to defend Heath on the outside. He's also having to defend from Corey Ott on the inside. I think Corey's actually got position on Heath here as they run down to turn numbers 2 and 3. Lewis Wedding already stretching away to quite a handy advantage. It looks like we're still clean through the field as we were at turn on race number 1. And we look through the shot here through the chicane. Oh, we've had a couple of spinners. Is that Rambo and Schwass? It looks like. It's Williams and Rambo?
Rambo again.
Rambo again. So that's not good news. We were clean for the first lap of race number 1, but not for this one. Corey's having a look at Heath on the inside here. So Corey Ott is through on Heath Dixon at the Abbey hairpin and goes up to 3rd. So he was talking himself up that he was going to have a go at it on race number 2, and he's already marching forward, up 1 position.
He's sticking to his philosophy of absolutely sending it. That was a brilliant move, under brakes, got it done. He couldn't do much but give up the corner to Ott. Ott will be very happy with himself there and will be hoping he has the pace to keep up with his front 2.
Well, he's got his head down now, Corey Ott. If he's going to talk the talk, he's got to walk the walk. And the next man is the one they call the Professor. It is Greg Nangle, and he's got to get his head down, get in that slipstream and try and close the gap down. But Heath's not going to let him get away here. And there's a little 4-car breakaway at the front of the field. Has got a gap on Grant English back in 5th. So he's all on his own at the moment. Got a bit of a gap to the front. He just goes wide there at turn number 1. Behind him is Schwass, which we incorrectly called. It looked like he was involved in that incident down at Maggots and Island. But unfortunately, it was Matt Williams and Rambo again. So I'm sure after burying the hatchet, those two guys are going to be having some words after the race yet again.
Just had a quick look at that incident. It looks like Williams ran wide going into turn 4, which allowed Rambo up the inside. They tried to go side by side through the chicane, and Rambo's turned in whilst there was a car there. It looks probably like a racing incident because there's no way that he would have known that Matt was there. So I'm not too sure there's really too much that could have been done to avoid that one without eyes on the back of his head.
Yep, and your sentiments are echoed. Yeah, but your sentiments are echoed by our pit lane reporter as well in Stairs, so looking like definitely a hard one to judge the blame. But out in front, Lewis is trying to stretch away here, and he did get out to an advantage early in race number 1, only to be sort of reeled in through a few tardy laps, and Greg was on him for most of the race. And it's that way again. They're not letting him get away. And first, second, third, and fourth are just strung out a little bit now, but they're breaking away from the remainder of the field.
Yeah, it's Wedding and Nangle set fastest laps in a row there. Wedding set a 1:16.2, Nangle set a 1:16.1, which were both the fastest race laps we've had. The qualifying laps have been faster, but with fuel loads on board, these are the fastest race laps we've had so far this round. Nangle's applying that pressure again, but time will tell if he can actually get anything done with it. And this time, he's going to have to contend with Corey Ott being right behind him and applying that pressure to him. And he's
another spin in the background as well, guys.
Who we have a spin? Was that in the back? Sorry, Brock.
Williams had a spin this time, an altercation with Brian Walsh.
Oh, so not a couple of good laps for Matt Williams, and after having to pit to replace his rear wing in race number 1, having a little bit of a battle on his hands early in race 2. So Lewis has actually made some ground here on Greg and eked out his advantage to just over a second now, and he wants that little bit of breathing space because he doesn't want these guys behind him to form a bit of a train and catch up to him. He's trying to break a stranglehold, and there he goes. Fastest lap for Lewis is a 1:16.1, and just still not that far. He's not that far away from the lap set by Greg Nangle on lap number 2, which was a 16.1 for a fastest lap of the race so far. So Greg still holds the fastest lap of the race. Just losing a little bit of touch with Lewis here.
Just looking back at Heathy in 4th, he's probably almost happy that someone else has passed him, because with someone else passing him, that means that there is more people in front of him that could possibly cause issues that will let him capitalise, which is the name of the game last round for him.
Well, we've seen what happened with Corey after a few spins in the last race, so we wouldn't put it past him that something like that would happen again. We hope it doesn't happen for Corey's sake. He's a hard-charging driver and sort of wears his heart on his sleeve. He'll be right up there and trying to make him get in amongst the top 2 positions, and he's just a half a second back from Greg at the minute. We spoke about pressure in previous rounds, and actual pressure and perceived pressure. People that have driven these cars will probably appreciate that if you're pumping in the fast lap times and you're catching, then the pressure's a bit perceived, when the real pressure is when you're right under somebody's rear wing, and it's how you deal with that pressure. It's all in the top of your head. It's all how you deal with it at the end of the day, and we've seen a few people make some mistakes where pressure is not really, it's not really heavy pressure, but it's perceived pressure. They think that someone's, gaining on them, and then they just lose it, and we've seen that happen quite a few times.
Just having a quick look at the times from that last lap, but the top 3 are covered by a 1/10 of a second essentially. It's there's nothing much different between the top 3. They're all so close together, and then there's about a second back to Heath. So these 3 look like they're going to get away from Heath and the rest of the field, but they'll be battling with each other for most of the race, I think.
Yeah, he looks a bit resigned back there, Heath Dixon. He just looks like quite content just to plot his own race at the moment and just be nice and consistent, because he knows that he can't go with these guys. They just got a bit too much pace on him, but he's just hoping that they'll trip over each other, as we just see a little bit of a lock-up from Wedding going there into Priory Corner and Brooklands.
Matt Williams is retired as well, guys, so he's parked it for the day.
So Matt Williams has unfortunately parked it for the day, so he's had unfortunately probably a bit too much damage to continue, and unfortunately no points for him in this second race.
Not a good round for Matt Williams at all. We had the spin in the first race as well, which meant he got very minimal points, so that's not very good for him at all. He'll be unhappy with himself.
No, you'll definitely be unhappy with himself. He only acquired himself 3 points in that last race because they managed to get him back out after fixing the rear wing, but not in this occasion. He's too badly damaged to continue.
Can I just have a quick shout out for Luke as well, guys? Currently running in 7th. He's an unranked driver at the moment, so he's just finding his feet with us. He's holding Baker behind him and not really losing a lot of time to Matthew Schwass in front of him. So two pretty accomplished drivers either side of the sandwich, but he's holding his own right now, so he's doing well.
Well, we've got him on screen at the moment, and he is under threat from Baker at the moment, but managing to keep him behind as he navigates the Abbey hairpin, and now on the run to Bridge, aptly named because they go under a bridge.
Baker is going to be, he's going to just do his thing where he's going to continue being consistent, and he's going to apply that slow amount of pressure because he's going to know that Luke isn't as experienced as he is in racing. He's just going to keep gently applying that pressure until something happens. It's a bit of a slow burn, this one, so we'll see what happens with the battle as Luke runs slightly wide.
Having been a victim of the Baker burn, I know what it's like. He just does not make a mistake. He's at you, and almost feels like he's sitting on your shoulder sometimes. Even if he's 3 seconds behind, you know you can't drop a wheel or have a half lose anywhere because he's going to pass you, and then he's not going to make that same mistake to let you pass.
Well, we're getting some reports from the pit commentary and the pit radios that Corey Ott already struggling with tyre wear, and he's up in third, so struggling to apply the blowtorch a little bit to Greg Nangle here already after not even half distance yet, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's he had a bit of a moment in the chicane as well, of turn.
Oh, Heath Dixon around. Heath Dixon's around. We've just cut to the point. Heath Dixon just around us, looped it after the end of the Abbey hairpin. Just got on the power a bit too early. He's actually lost 2 positions up. That's down to 6. So he'll be kicking himself that he's made such a silly mistake. All on his own, Sim, he was too. So he was under no pressure whatsoever. Just trying to keep touch with the guys ahead, but he's lost out. Matt Schwass has jumped up into 5th, and Grant English now into 4th. And that's a few extra points that Heath probably would have been penciling in as he navigated the track, but now he's got some more work to do.
Yeah. Sometimes the pressure of driving on your own can cause that. You just lose a lot of concentration just for a split second, and yeah, you're gone. So hopefully he can pull back a couple of spots on that, because this could be, well, this has serious championship implications. It's only a short championship, the Formula 3 series. So
we're just coming around in the background, and that's Baker around in the background. So he did a full 360, got on the exit curb out of Copse, and did a full 360 and managed to recover it. It was pointing the right direction, but he was in the pit lane exit. But he's now lost touch with Luke, so the pressure of
Luke
trying to hunt him,
a sigh of relief.
He'll be breathing an absolute sigh of relief, and Rambo can now see Baker ahead of him, so that's going to be an ARW gentleman's battle if Rambo can catch up. Baker be kicking himself after that one as well, because again, such a silly mistake, just getting on the power too early on the curb, and we spoke about it before the start of this race, that getting on the curbs is and getting on the power while you're on the curbs is almost an absolute no-no.
What do we say about the commentator's curse? He just singing a whole bunch of praises, and he's looped it on us.
Yeah, well, it comes back to bite, doesn't it? We've done it more often than not, and there's a few times that we've said it and gotten away with it, but more often than not, we say something that heap praise on people, and they inevitably bin it on us.
Speaking of people we've been heaping praise on, Nangle had a half spin at the hairpin, and Corey Ott wasn't able to avoid him. Hasn't damaged his car, luckily, but they're now about 4 seconds back on Wedding.
Yeah,
so Wedding is definitely in control of this race now.
He certainly is.
I was going to say, looking back, Matt Schwass has been a bit of a quiet achiever this race. He's up 4 positions already, from 9th to 5th. And he's actually keeping his tyres a lot better than the people around him.
Oh, we've had someone go around to the back. That's Luke. Another one we were talking about praises as before. I think Brock mentioned as well. Now, Baker's gotten back through as a result of that. So both those guys who were battling on the last 2 laps having a spin, and there's now been an exchange of positions. So Baker's spin probably wasn't as worse as Luke. He stayed in the right direction, but Luke spun to the inside of the right-hander at Maggots Complex, and went off the track and had to recover. It took him a lot longer to get back onto the track and point in the right direction than Baker did, and as a result he's now down to 8th. He's still gained 2 positions since the start, but the old commentator's curse strikes again.
He's a crafty racer, Baker. He thought that putting the blowtorch on him wasn't going to work, so he was going to have a spin and then release the pressure and wait for Luke to spin. Perfect,
I don't think it was intentional, but we can call it what we want. But Baker is back through to 7th, and he needs to get his head down, but there's some considerable gap between him and Heath now. It's 9 seconds, so there's only 6 laps remaining.
Speaking of Heath, he is catching up to the back of Matt Schwass, who is in turn catching up to the back of Grant English.
Well,
Schwass has much he's been doing an incredible job to preserve his tyres. His tyres are a lot better than the people around him. And he's definitely got a chance of outlasting everyone else in this race. Probably not the front runners, but at least the people around him.
Well, here's Schwass right now, and
up.
Heath has got a little bit of a toe down the straight, but this is where he lost it a couple of laps ago. And yeah, you're right, this train is closing up. This three-car gaggle headed by Grant English is coming through Bridge now, and there's still plenty of time for Heath to get back to 4th place. But he certainly won't challenge those guys in the top 3. Lewis Wedding has effectively checked out. In actual fact, Lewis Wedding's about to put Voda a lap down at the moment. He's already put Brian Walsh a lap down. Voda's about to go a lap down to the race leader, according to our timing screens. But we'll stay with this battle for 4th, 5th and 6th because it's closing up. And there's now 5 laps remaining as they cross the line.
The race has gone fast, hasn't it? There's been action up and down the field, so it's gone quite fast. It looks like Schwass has had a much better run off of the corner there, off the first corner, but there's not much you can do with it, unfortunately, into Maggots.
No, you need a really good exit off of Copse Corner to have any hope of having a passing opportunity down here. Beautifully apex there, as from our curbside cam. These guys are only separated by 6/10 combined, all of them. Now Heath's got a run here. Heath's a little bit closer than he was the last time around, and the slipstream in these cars is a lot more powerful than the Super Series, and Heath has a slipstream, looks to the inside, he's got track position, and that's a nice solid pass. Matt gives him the room, and that's a beautiful path from Heath. Oh, it's the little wiggle on the exit will give a little bit of incentive to Matt again. Heath's going to have to stay to the inside. The track goes ultra defensive. It'll compromise the speed a little bit, but he manages to hold it together and consolidates that position. But that was a beautiful passing move down at the hairpin. Oh, and we've had it. Who's a little bit of a smoke show just ahead?
That's a back marker.
That's a back marker. So a little bit, breathe a sigh of relief for a minute there. It looks like that's probably Voda, I believe. Is that who they're coming up to as a back marker?
I believe it is, yes.
David Keane, was it? No, sorry, never mind. Yes, Voda.
And pulling over on the straight as well. So if he needs to stay there. Oh, we just Grant English, a little bit of lag there for a minute. We've what happened to Grant? Have we just lost Grant English from the server? I think we may have.
Grant's got technical dramas.
So Grant technical dramas, and that's unfortunate. That puts Heath back into 4th place by default. I'm sure you would have been sizing up and looking for a passing manoeuvre in the next couple of laps, but well, that's a disappointment. We've lost Grant English to technical dramas, and that's not the first driver that we've lost to technical issues. I'm not going to put the Moz on him, but we've lost a couple before.
Sorry, I just watched Rambo drive straight into the back of Luke on the brakes.
Oh, and we cut to that battle, and Rambo's right with Luke at the moment. Will he get the slipstream? He's in it right now, and I'm not sure if Luke's nursing a damaged car or if they're both nursing a damaged car. Well, Luke's just locked up going under brakes into the hairpin. Rambo's right with him, so we could very well have an exchange of positions there. Probably nothing in it. Rambo's gained nothing out of that exchange, and if he did, he would have had to relinquish that position back to Luke and try and find a passing opportunity at another point on the track. But he's hungry, Rambo. He wants to get back up the order. He started 5th in both races and finished a bit further down the order than he would have expected after a few spins in race 1, and the same here in race 2, but just trying to get as far up the field as he possibly can.
Corey Ott, after being dropped back a bit after dropping back a bit from Greg Nangle, has caught back up to him, and now there's only half a second between them, so Corey will be hoping for a bit of a dive maybe to get Nangle off guard. Well, we're seeing through the current points at the moment as the positions stand. Heath will be on 68 points and will retain the lead from Corey on 52 with Nangle on 51.
Well, we're just coming up to the back end of lap number 13 here as we navigate Priory and now into Brooklands Corner. We've only 2 corners left in this lap, and we've only got 2 more laps after this. So Corey's going to have to make a move very, very soon if he wants that second step on the podium.
Oh, sorry. Back down the field, Luca and Rambo are going hammer and tongs at it into Abbey. And
here we go as we cut back to it.
Very close.
Very, very close.
Rambo's going to think about the inside. Luca's run wide.
He's run wide.
He's managed to hold it on. Is Rambo going to stick it up the inside here? He has. Oh, he's done it. He's done it quite well. Luke just was a little bit wide there, and Rambo took the opportunity.
Oh, and very close.
On the apex there too, and just spooked Luke out a little bit. So Rambo has won out in that battle there.
Well, Luke did run a little bit wide at Priory and gave Rambo a sniff at the inside up to Brooklands, and he did make that move stick. And very gentlemanly, like, just to give him enough room when he knew he was there, and Rambo needed no second invitation to make that move stick. Well,
it's quite a mature bit of racing by both of them there, so that's always good to see for the series.
Good to see. Well, we know that the race leader, Lewis Wedding, is checked out, and here he is, just coming up to the end of lap number 14, so he's got a 5-second gap. He's just eased off a little bit here, but the battle for second and third is not over. Greg and Corey are still only separated by a half second. Corey needs to get a slipstream here to have any shot at getting close to Greg. He needs to really close up. Can he use it under braking? He's just dropped back a little bit here.
The Ott car for the last couple of laps, guys, and the area where Greg was strong in race 1, Corey seems to have found something into the hairpin, because he's actually gaining quite significantly under brakes and on the acceleration out of the hairpin on the angle. So whether or not Greg's having a little bit of brake drama or some balance issues with his brake bias, and Corey's got it dialed in right now. So
Corey got a nice exit out of the first turn there as well. Brock, sorry to cut you off. He got a very nice exit.
He's gone very wide.
He's gone wide. That'll be the end of that. Unless Greg makes a mistake, that'll be the end of that. So he went a bit too deep into turn number 3, and now he's lost all of that advantage that he'd gained down the straight, all the time that he'd made up. And with a bit of luck, Greg should retain his position, and it'll be back-to-back second place podium finishes for Greg Nangle. But cutting to the man out in front, Lewis Wedding, he's controlled both races start to finish as he navigates the final few corners. There's a back marker there. I think that's Brian Walsh, just nicely lets him through on the racing line. 2 corners to navigate. Here's the first one. And the second one is flat out, shouldn't trouble the race leader at all. And it's the second race in a row that we've seen a double-double, a double pole and a double win. And this time it goes to Lewis Wedding. So maximum points from this round. There's Greg Nagel finishes second, and Corey Ott finishes third. The points leader, and he will retain his points leading advantage at the head of the standings. Heath Dixon, pretty a bit disappointed to finish fourth, but he did make a few silly mistakes and had all the hard work to do. Matt Schwass keeps his nose clean for 5th place, and Baker somehow manages to get himself back up to 6th. Rambo coming across the line in the next 2-1-0. There he is. He gets 7th place ahead of Luke in 8th. David Keane, some considerable distance behind. He's 9th. And the 10th place man is Aussie. So he's a little bit further behind David, about 5 or 6 seconds behind David. We're just waiting for the rest of the guys to cross the line and register their points finishes. And the last man who to finish, I guess, on the lead lap according to the timing screens will be Voda with 1 minute and 7 behind. David Keane Voda's a lap down. Sorry, yeah, Voda's a lap down. I do apologise.
Yeah,
and here's Aussie. And
through.
Aussie, the last man, a lap down. So there we go. Race 2 for the AMS Australia Formula 3 Series done and dusted. And your race winner on screen yet again. Lewis Wedding controlled both races, start to finish, maximum points, a double pole and a double win. It mimics the same feat that Heath Dixon did in Santa Cruz in round 1. And he's certainly staked his claim in this series after what can only be described as a disastrous first round at Santa Cruz.
Knowing Lewis, he's going to be a little bit annoyed that Greg got fastest lap in both races, though. Looking at the times,
I'm sure he will. It's I guess having the fastest lap is like a badge of honour in most races, but Lewis, being the man out in front, naturally would have been expecting to get the fastest lap, but not in this occasion.
Yeah, it was a nice measured drive from Wedding, and who had an excellent drive. Corey Ott started 4th, finished 3rd, so he's got his podium. He's pipped Heath for that podium, which I'm sure Heath will be displeased about. but Ott has joined us in the commentary box. Corey, that was definitely a much better showing than race 1 for you. No spins this time. Do you reckon it was down to the setup?
Oh, I don't know. The setup, I was looking at it, looked very similar to what I had, which is basically base setup with a couple of wing adjustments. But yeah, it was, I don't know, just, I didn't have the long run in practice in what I should have had. I was doing 3-4 lap runs, whereas the first race caught me out with the amount of tyre wear, and spinning it 360 off the curb and saving it was sort of my highlight for race 1. But yeah, I think trying to go too deep into 4 and lost the rear. I could have, if I would have not sent it there, I would have got him at the hairpin. But yeah, it's the way it goes. So hopefully gather up and see what happens next week at Adelaide in the GT3s.
Yeah, well, with that result, I believe that puts you to second in the championship behind Heath. So a good consistent weekend for you at least.
Yeah, just I think at the moment I've got to start thinking about championship now if I'm sort of in contention for one, because not going to get a race win, might as well go try for a championship. So
I was about to say, Corey, you're not far away from a race win, mate. You're peppering it at the moment, so I'd say keep your head down. You're not too far away from it.
yeah, exactly.
We've also got Stairs here to give us his thoughts on the race. He's been watching from the pit lane. Stairs, what's your takeaway from these 2 races?
Oh, thank you, Bagsy. Well, my takeaway, you can't really say anything other than Wedding really showed his class today. He had an enormous amount of pressure on him in that first race and absorbed it like a sponge. Even though Nangle was probably the faster man over the course of the race, looking at his fastest lap pace, he just didn't have it for him in the second race, and so Wedding was able to streak clear. So we saw 2 different performances from Wedding in the first and second races here, and they were both equally impressive.
Yeah.
After you, mate.
Yeah, what did you think of the performance of Grant English? He was obviously up there pretty well, but unfortunately had those technical issues.
Yeah, unfortunately he was up there in 4th, so he was looking actually quite good in that second race. Beg your pardon. So to be honest, he was a bit anonymous for me for most of the race. I was sort of following the heroics of the other people who were yo-yoing up and down the field, but English was just sort of quietly achieving before that disconnection robbed him of a lot of valuable points.
Yeah, he was. We've been joined, thank you for that, Stairs. We've been joined in the commentary box by our pole sitter and race winner, the only person who managed that this round here in Northamptonshire, Lewis Wedding. Lewis, that was an excellent 2 races from start to finish. First race, obviously, Nangle was right behind you the whole time. Second one, not so much. How are you feeling with the pressure, knowing how it had gone in previous races?
Well, I felt pretty good. In the prelude to this round, I'd finally gotten myself around to getting a clamp so I could race with my Fanatec again. But just felt comfortable after I made some changes about half an hour, 20 minutes before qualifying, and it just straightened the car up and made it easy and comfortable driving, and happened to be fast as well, thankfully.
Well, Lewis, you were the only man to do the double-double, as we like to call it, mimicking what Heath Dixon did in round 1. So pole in both races and a win in both races. It puts you in good stead for the championship. We heard from our pit lane reporter Stairs during the race that kind of are the open wheels are kind of your cars. Is this probably an ominous warning to some of the guys in the field that to look out for you in upcoming rounds?
Maybe. With open wheels, it just depends how fast they are and what tracks they're at. So tracks like Silverstone, and obviously even in Porsches at Monza, like European tracks, I'm quite good at because I've raced billions of laps around. And even this version, I've done a little bit of racing back in R-Factor, so I was just comfortable racing here. And if there's more tracks like this, I haven't had a look yet, but if there is, I feel pretty confident that I can keep this up, hopefully.
You seem to have a bit more of a settled car in the second race. Did you add a little bit more downforce or soften up the spring for race 2, mate, or did you run the exact same setup?
No, I ran the exact same setup. Just, I think I just was under just a little bit less pressure, but even then, I think obviously that first race you sort of find a little bit more out about the car, and you know where the limit is and what you can do with it. So I was just a little bit more cautious, and I just knew which corners I could push a little bit more and other corners where I could, you know, make a mistake. So I just took it a bit more easy. Obviously the right-hander and hairpin, and if I got that right, I was pretty much set.
Well, speaking of European tracks, the next round that we visit for the Formula 3 Championship is Brands Hatch, which is actually the Indy circuit, which is a furious little bull ring, and that will be on May the 6th, so continuing the European trend. Our next circuit that we visit, though, as part of the AMS Australia Series will be Phillip Island on Thursday, April 26th for the Supercar Series. So another series that you're doing quite well at there, Lewis.
Yeah, hopefully I can continue similar form to the last race we had there. Obviously, I don't think Hobbo will be. I think he'll probably do a little bit more practice this time. So, so
we're expecting a good battle come Thursday. Is that what you're reading? You're reading into that?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Porsches is probably a more representative gap to where I am to him, as opposed to Simmons Plains. I think he's just a little bit faster than me, so I'm going to have to obviously put in a bit of time during the week and in the lead up to get a setup right and get a strategy right too.
Well, we look forward to what will be an interesting battle come Thursday night for the Super Series race, and they'll be broadcast here on YouTube from Stairs and Madbird in commentary. We look forward to that. Gentlemen, closing thoughts before we wind up this broadcast for the night.
I got championship points if you want me to quickly run through top couple of those, mate.
Yeah, run us through the top 5 or 6 for all the viewers, please, Rock.
Heath Dixon's still leading. He's on 68 points. Corey Ott, solid results on 52. Greg Nangle, 51. He'd be ruining Santa Cruz, where he lost a bunch of points in the second race accident there. Baker is on 46. Lewis Wedding's on 40, thanks to his double-double. And Johnny's on 34.
And we also got Matt Schwass, I believe, as well, potentially on 40 as well, along with Lewis Wedding. But by virtue of his 2 race wins, that gives Wedding the advantage in the points, and that's going off of my calculations there, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I've got 2 Matt Schwasses. I've got a Matthew Schwass and a Matt Schwass, just to make my life hard.
just to confuse people, but we'll get those points in order.
Yeah, correct. They are on 40 points if I combine those 2 together.
And it's interesting you mentioned Johnny as well. I just looking through the results, I believe he was the man that we lost at the very beginning of the night session after practice, and we didn't see him again because we did see that he'd set a couple of laps and he then disappeared and never to be seen again for the rest of the night. So disappointing for him not to be able to add into his points tally, because he was running second in the championship and now drops all the way down to effectively 7th, because we have a tie for 5th. Well, the next time we will see you on the AMS Australia broadcasts, we'll be coming to you from Phillip Island for the Supercars Series. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being in commentary tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
And until then, please drive safe, and we'll see you again soon.